That's true. I see. That's true. I see. I didn't know.
Where did he
I
live?
just wasn't big.
And a hush fell over the crowd. A hush of poets. Oh, a hush of poets. I love that. I'll give you just a few moments to quiet and settle yourselves fully in. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Annette Billings, and I am so happy to see all of you here today. I would first like to thank the Kansas weather for allowing us to be here with just fog and dampness and no ice or snow. I would like to thank each of you for how you have responded in the planning of this program. Diane Silver and I, Ms. Craver, and I have lovingly and gladly taken this on this year to honor Ronda and to honor William Stafford as well, and to honor poetry and community and art. A few housekeeping things. The bathroom is through that door. Point through the door. Point through the door. We have approximately 30 readers, presenters for our time frame. And so we are asking that you please limit your sharing to 5 minutes unless we've indicated otherwise. Each person, there is a list of readers, presenters here at the podium. And if you will introduce the next person after you are finished, and if you forget, Diane or I will do that for you, but if you'll introduce the next person. We will have an intermission about halfway through, 10 or 15 minutes. We'll let you know when that is. And there are some treats to be enjoyed over to my left. I'd like to extend the gratitude of Rhonda's family, particularly her son Scott, her daughter Apollonia. They are so grateful for how you have responded in love and community to them. They would love to be here, and they are with us in spirit and hopefully via technology also. A special thank you to Michael Pierce. Michael, would you raise your hand, please? He has provided the incredible photographs that are here in front of us. I invite you not to just look at them, but to spend time with them. They are beautiful. And with that, I introduce our Nancy Hubble, who will help us fully open this place and space and this experience for all that it is. Nancy, please.
I bring you a welcome and blessing from another species. Homage to our beloved late president, not late, but our past president, apparently. So translation. Welcome. The flock has gathered. How beautiful we all are. How wonderful to see that we have all lived through yet another night, and that we are here together once again. Blessings upon you. May all your eggs be smooth and easy, all your scratch rich with corn. May all your runs be clean and breezy, and all your coops face the dawn. May all your chicks be easily taught, and every bug swiftly caught. May all the hatchets raised against you be useless, and every varmint you meet be toothless. If you'd hold applause until the end. And for William Stafford, he wrote, "At the unnational monument along the Canadian border. This is the field where the battle did not happen, where the unknown soldier did not die. This is the field where grass joined hands, where no monument stands, and the only heroic thing is the sky. Birds fly here without any sound, unfolding their wings across the open. No people killed or were killed on this ground, hallowed by neglect and an air so tame that people celebrate it by forgetting its name." And it inspired me to write, "Sitting Zazen." Zazen is a form of meditation. I sit Zazen to find that no-name state of grace, an inner field where grass holds hands, where my breath wings silent up across the sky, and where no monument stands to all my ego battles. Sitting here on empty, no-name ground, sometimes the hound of discontent or fear will fill my ears with a searching, hungry sound. And then the grass joins hands, leaving no telltale scent to catch. And so he rushes past and does not find me here. And for Ronda, and perhaps for Kat, who died last week, my husband, who died last year, all our beloveds. Red Samurai, with an unwavering heart, she follows the code, the way of the samurai. Bushido, ha! Master of the sharp pen and bicycle fighting style. She shows no mercy to any blank page that challenges her space. Giving no edge, she draws out her pen, words bow at her feet as she moves her hand outward, making the invisible visible. She chooses to leave us in sadness, to take the red road. She stops to kneel at her shrine in the deep, piney woods. Smiling, she lays down her pen. Standing, she finds her bike, leaning against a nearby tree. She moves quickly now, with courage, undaunted. She sends her wheels spinning, her legs pedal like leaping. She laughs for the joy of riding the wind, her red hair flying. She does not look back. Thank you. And Karen, Miriam Goldberg, our next reader.
Yeah, Karen.
Thank you so much for gathering. I am afraid that I'm going to have to read and run, which something I always look down on people for doing, but here I am, because we're catching a plane to go see my mother. But I love the call here to read one of Rhonda's and one of Stafford's and one of our own. And a reminder, Rhonda's celebration of life is March 15th, 1 to 4 p.m. at Maselli's. The family will provide a lot of appetizers and beverages, and you get to bring a dessert potluck. So this is one of Rhonda's, and it's the first poem of hers that I've published in the 150 Kansas Poems website. It's called Creek Play. If you look closely, small freckled limbs, not yet diagnosed with MS, make their way boldly up a dusty hill once mountainous in size. A creek, both deep and dry, draws us in season after season as our bodies changed and dreams grew larger than the skies. Hiding, playing cowboys and Indians, each passing car a threat from near and far. Years later, shared dates and hopes for future plans left less time or attention to barren, rugged beauty of the land. To climb these hills fills my nose with the dusty smell of Kansas sneezing out, the ability to be young again. We searched for fossils, dinosaur teeth, and arrowheads, found rattlesnakes and cow skulls. I became a mother and writer. You manufactured crack. Just think about that. If we went back and did it again, would the sunset still inspire? Would our desire to escape have changed? Would my body, spasming in pain, be made whole again? Would you still be imprisoned, feeling the brutal Kansas winter from within a castle prison on the prairie? And that's one Rhonda wrote quite a while ago. I also wanted to thank Annette and Diane and Iris and others who organized this. We are exponentially harder to herd than cats. So I often read this poem because I just love it. It's a short William Stafford poem. I really need this right now. Maybe you do too. Assurance. You will never be alone. You hear so deep a sound when autumn comes. Yellow pulls across the hills and thrums, or the silence after lightning before it says its names, and then the clouds' wide-mouthed apologies. You were aimed from birth. You will never be alone. Rain will come, a gutter filled, an Amazon, long aisles. You never heard so deep a sound. Moss on rock and years, you turn your head. That's what the silence meant. You're not alone. The whole wide world pours down. And this also speaks to those of us who are also reeling from the death of our very beloved Kat Green, who died on January 18th. Her service is May 1st, so
June.
Thank you. Her service is June 1st on her birthday, and it's going to be at the wetlands, also 1 to 4 pie potluck. There's kind of a theme here with poets. So I had the immense luck and whimsy to take a lot of road trips with Rhonda involving poetry. And I wrote this shortly after Scott called me and told me she died, because this is what we do. Riding with Rhonda. Now I know your secret forever, you said, as I drove 80 miles an hour with orange fingers and salty tongue from all those Cheetos we shared, giggling in a conspiracy of poets, a murder of young crows bent on growing old, a fast-moving murmuration of words. It was the trip after the trip when you made me stand on a table in a sandwich shop at high lunch in Salina, Kansas, and recite a poem I couldn't remember, so I had to make most of it up. The trip before that trip was us springing ourselves on unsuspecting and highly irritated quiche eaters in Dodge City because we were supposed to read poetry and no one showed up. Stand on the threshold and shout out your poem, you instructed us, as Kansans sipping lemonade tried so hard not to make eye contact or as politely as they could ask us to stop. This was before we got lost past the end of the world near Ulysses, but found the wind that's bred for fight out there as we bundled our pillows and bags to the edge of town motel, months before the trip to St. Francis, where you grew up, when we met Grandma Barb, your elegantly coiffed old teacher, for the best fried chicken in this dimension in a gas station. Was that after or before you told me new curves of your own unlikely story that landed you here against the odds and with the gods of fire, trepidation, and the saving grace of poetry, so that you could speak your poems loud enough to drown out the cicadas in that 100-degree bandstand in the park before we went to the cinder block motel with the sign, "Hunters, please use plastic bags on the beds before you dress your deer." So, we were always traveling, even in our own town, losing track of just how much French toast we ate at Milton's, the Roost, while puzzling through the unlikely survival of the ones we love, including ourselves, delighting in each other's children as well as the strangers who loved poetry, the books forged out of impossible dread, and the surprising love that lifts you through the dread and carries you here, a hospital bed in what was once your Airbnb living room, your dog on your lap, and so far north of our town, later surely festooned with blue Christmas lights, even deep in the woods, where somehow you crossed into a place we can't follow, accept, or fathom, despite how much you wanted to live, how deeply we all love you, loved you, love you. Thank you. And next we have Steve Paul, and I'm very sorry to miss the rest of you, but this is being recorded? Yeah. Very cool.
Karen, good to see you.
I'm wondering whether the microphone is actually engaged because the sound's a little low. Okay, but I can speak loudly. Indulge me here for a second while I document the moment. If you don't mind, thank you very much. What a great crowd. And I don't want to take too much of my time, my 5 minutes, to tell you who I am or why I'm here. But I want to thank Annette and Diane and Iris for squeezing me in because, hang on, I want to make sure I'm at 5 minutes. 4 years ago, I started working on a biography of William Stafford. I'm kind of here in tribute mostly to Bill. I only met Rhonda for the first time a few years ago when I came out here to see this event. And get a sense of who the Lawrence people were, and I really appreciate the opportunity for you all to work me in today to kind of reconnect and read a tribute of both Rhonda and Bill. This is the beginning of my book. It sounds like it might be coming later in the book, but it's the actual beginning. I will say I'm on the verge of signing a contract for the book, so I'm getting close to the end. I also brought with me a poem from Stafford's archives that I'm sure you've never heard before. It's unpublished. It was published once in a journal, but never collected. I've encountered many poems that are unpublished, and this is a fun one that I thought I'd bring. The book is going to be called, I hope, The Shadow Poet, A Life of William Stafford. To the very end, William Stafford had the sound of his mother in his head. On August 28, 1993, hours before he collapsed in his kitchen of a massive heart attack, Stafford climbed onto his writing sofa, as he had done so almost daily for half a century. In the dark and quiet of early morning, he scratched out in his bird pen strokes what turned out to be his last poem. Quote, "Are you Mr. William Stafford?" he began. Its origin was a phone call from an insurance salesman he received a couple of days earlier. And then his thoughts leapt far into the past, the sun on his skin, his mind's eye recreating once again the small Kansas town of his boyhood. Quote, "You can't tell when strange things with meaning will happen," he wrote. And then in his mind, his mother spoke up. "You don't have to prove anything," my mother said. "Just be ready for what God sends." I listened and put my hand out in the sun again. It was all easy. It was not uncommon for Stafford to invoke the presence of God, but he knew from where he came, and he didn't shy away from recognizing whatever we'd like to call a higher spirit. And he knew quite possibly that he was dying, and he knew how much he owed to his mother's voice. More than once, he credited that voice as the source of his sounds, of his poems, like the one he left on his draft writing paper that last day. Quote, "It seems to me," he'd say, "that my mother talking is what I hear in my poems." When Studs Terkel once pressed him on the matter in a radio interview, quote, "So she was the bard?" Stafford replied, "I think it would startle her to hear you say that, but in certain crucial ways, she was a bard. She couldn't help it. She got so much emotionally involved in gossiping, it turned into poetry." In one of Stafford's most enduring early poems, "The Farm on the Great Plains," the speaker's mother is no longer home, the place long gone except in memory. She and everything else in those far-off landscapes became the resonant, ghostly stuff of Stafford's poetry. Easy. From his Kansas roots, William Stafford went on to become a prolific and prominent poet, though very much an unlikely poet who would occupy a quietly influential place along America's literary trail. He would be, as a contemporaneous writer Lewis Simpson once put it, quote, "a poet of the people in the deepest and most meaningful sense." His mother certainly helped to set his bearings as a man of the people, but his father offered considerable life-shaping guidance as well. And then there was the wind. That's a tease. Hang on a couple years and maybe you get to read the whole thing. I'd like to close with, as I mentioned, a poem of his that's uncollected, only published in one journal. It's called "For the Shtick People," and I'm not here suggesting that Stafford was in tune with Yiddish, although he knew many Jewish poets, of course, Marvin Bill and many others. But the shtick people is something other, another cultural comment, as I understand it. And the poem comes from an experience of his at Nescoen, which is a coastal community in Oregon, which I happened to visit last November, just a couple months ago when I was out there doing more research. At birth, launched into light, we forget the one great gift, how over and over again our lives curved into a story that lives on like seaweed, undulating in and out of the dark, but that some, the shtick people, never know light. Shadows are all that they have. Every autumn for them I chose one leaf, racing along the stormy beach, and follow and watch till it loses itself where Araberry, the seal that has patrolled for years the Nescoen, comes briefly out of the deep, a sleek small head in the froth. Our eyes meet, and he knows I have been kind once more to these people who yearn so toward us at night that they quench our matches and candles in their dear love for the little we have, shadows of shadows of shadows. Thanks very much. My time is
Dennis Edsel? Dennis, are you here? He's here.
He's here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Dennis.
Hello, everyone.
Right?
I want to thank again Annette, Diane, and Iris for planning this. To tell you the truth, it was just kept getting in my mind that I would see Rhonda here today. It was just really kind of trippy. And then I realized, yeah, I am seeing Rhonda here today. I just want to it just speaks to me, her heart and love she had for people, that you met her and you knew it. So I'm not going to skip one of my poems, and I'll skip a William Stafford poem. There'll be plenty of times to read one of those for me, but I'll read a Ronda poem because I just wanted to share just this and how Ronda, just a little tribute if you don't mind, because it's just, poetry for me helped save my life through a lot of the things I've been through in life. And Rhonda was just that too. She could show everyone that us as survivors, anyone who had grief, survival, that poetry was a way of healing out of that. I had her at Washburn actually as a class visitor, and when water signs came out, and she was so open and sharing with the students, and they were all on board with that, even sharing the things that we might have stigmas, that our cultural have stigmas. It's like, no, there is no to get through that shame or whatever we've been through writing. In that, out of a class of 20, 14 students wrote on the semester evaluation at the end how wonderful it was to have Rhonda in the classroom. Wow. And went on about that. It's like, oh yeah, sometimes we'll have visitors and they might say, but it was amazing. And that showed me too. It's good to have Rhonda as a class visitor. Okay, here's the Rhonda poem I'm going to read. It's from Winds of Time. I am, and it's from the NPR prompt, I am from high plateaus, roving wheat fields, wind that blows from all directions, sometimes all at once. I am from dirt mixed with blood, memories, unreachable, unthinkable, unmistakable human fragility, and strengths cannoned into one being. I am from the smell of oil, caked dirt, cattle, okay, shit. I'll say it, it's Rhonda's words, okay. Snow so fresh the land devours it in giant gulps that spew forth mists, inhale to leave, lungs frostbitten, minds yearning, listing towards spring thaw. I am from creek beds layered with dinosaur bones, fossilized cottonwood seeds, corn tassels, Cheyenne Indian arrowheads, hope. I am come into being, a part of the place that birthed me into this time. The fiber of my insides carries cells regenerating by generations of eating dirt in all its glorious forms. I am from and I go forth. Thank you.
Our next reader is Annette Billings.
Yay!
I am reading and standing here for both myself and for Wyatt Townley, who would like to express her gratitude for the love and the support from the community that she has received as she battles and wins against breast cancer. Wyatt Townley wanted to be here today, but I forbid her as a nurse to be in a crowd. So I've made myself part of her healthcare team. We share a special connection. About 15 years ago, my first personalized license tag was poetry. And I was so proud of that. But when I went to get it renewed, they said, Miss Billings, you can no longer use poetry because someone else in the state uses it. And the new rule is only one person in the state can have it. And I was miffed. I was angry until I found out that it was Wyatt Townley, the poet laureate of Kansas, that had it. And so now my license tag is poetic license. I'm going to read the poem that Wyatt Townley selected, and Karen, who may have left already, read it also, but it bears repeating. One of the things that Wyatt Townley shared was that cancer battle can be very lonely, and she felt very grateful for the support that she has. Assurance. You will never be alone. You hear so deep a sound when autumn comes. Yellow pulls across the hills and thrums, or the silence after lightning before it says its name. And then the clouds' wide mouth apologies. You were aimed since birth. You will never be alone. Rain will come, a gutter filled, an Amazon, long aisles. You never heard so deep a sound, moss on rocks and years. You turn your head. That's what the silence meant. You're not alone. The whole wide world pours down. I want to share. Can I have a chair? Right here. Come around me. Got it. Upon hearing of their demise, God damn it, death. What? Were you crop dusting for poets when you spirited them away? Were you in a black drone, death, cackling while indiscriminately spraying poets, both famous and lesser known, as though they were an agricultural nuisance? For the love of God, death. Did you spend one thought on the wealth of words they held in suspension, poised to be poems? What on earth were you thinking, death? To rob our world of art we so sorely need. Did you smirk to catch us in your favorite way, off guard? Oh my God, death. Did Nikki Giovanni feel remiss to not expect you? Did she protest that old doesn't mean ready? And did she demand that you stop by Mars? And our Ronda Miller, did she cuss you out beautifully and stall just long enough to pay her poems forward and smooth her lips in red? Did Kimberly Locke look you in the eye like a rebel and stop at each grandbaby's bed to kiss sleeping cheeks? Good grief, death. Did you tap a gray foot, check your watch, and roll your eyes at the audacity, the unmitigated and lovely gall of women delaying death as only poets can? Are you happy now, death? Being in the bonus round and all when poets die. God damn it, death. God damn it. Michael Pierce.
Michael, do you have anything to?
Yes, he
Come
did.
on up.
I am not a poet, so we'll get that up straight. I envy you that got to do all the road trips with Rhonda. I didn't meet her until 4 years ago in the midst of COVID, when she had asked me to speak at the Kansas Authors Club, which we had to do online for that one, about what I've done for a living. I can tell you that unless you complimented her children, which is so easy to do, what you've done for her to put her with William Stafford is one of the biggest compliments that you could ever give her. And I promise you that. We will see. I've had a lot of loss in the last few months. Rhonda is one of them, so I tend to melt from time to time, but you guys are poets. You guys are wonderful at that. One thing I did for Rhonda a lot was I kind of became her chauffeur. I'm semi-retired. I could take her to, I don't know, she counted up 20 some trips to KU Med. I took her in. And then her classes, when she taught, I could drop her off and I could go ride my cycle for 10 or 15 miles. I'm the one that got her started cycling. I'm the one that created the fishing beast, the outdoor photography beast. She wore me out with it. But most people don't realize what she went through to teach these people, the inmates. I mean, she liked poetry anywhere. But if she had so much in common with these people. And this is called, it's a narrative. It's called The Last Class. And it's the November the 8th, which was the last class she taught there, last class she taught, period. And a week from this day, she went under surgery at KU Med. Also want to point out her best friend forever, Judy Grant, is here. Judy was the one that said Rhonda said Judy was always there. Didn't have to be asked. She just walked in. Rhonda said if everybody has one friend like Judy, they're blessed. And Rhonda truly felt blessed. And her kids are listening to the poems and they're enjoying them. They made comments on them. So we'll see what I can do. It was a rare time. It was a rare time of celebration for 6 inmates. From a detention center classroom, all carried completion certificates that proved to the world and themselves they were smart, teachable, and talented. Their papers felt extra special to the several who never held a high school diploma. All 6 felt far better about their future. Ronda Miller, a rare, loving adult in their lives, taught them how their written words could soothe frustrations better than drugs, alcohol, or violence. And that no matter their physical location, their minds were always free and free to create the poetry that would give them hope and give them balance. As the inmates celebrated amid the thick walls and guards, Rhonda limped along slowly on a sidewalk down the freedom side of the facility. Her left arm was wrapped around my right arm for support. Her right hand cradled where feeding tubes entered her abdomen and felt, in her words, like a belly full of sharp wires. Mm-hmm. Rhonda's trademark red lipstick winced every few steps from the pain. At her car, Rhonda's soft, "Please take me home," were welcome words. The previous Friday, we'd gone straight from the classroom to an emergency room where she could get a myriad of infections, pains, rising temperatures, bleeding inside and out treated. And she kept that hidden from the class. Rhonda refused to miss teaching these classes. She might skip a medical appointment. She would not skip those classes. Her students, she said, had been let down by society most of their lives. Rhonda knew such emotional pain could be worse than physical pain. Goodness knows Rhonda had lived more than her share of both. Rhonda's classes of poetry did very well and drew high marks from the staff. One reason is because Rhonda was a master poet. More importantly, she quickly gained the students' respect and trust when she spoke of a childhood that was like many of theirs. Rhonda had grown up without a mother. Hers had been murdered when Rhonda was 3. Rhonda's early years included deep poverty, true hunger, and the hollowness of the foster care system. Rhonda had been abused, and sometimes by those entrusted with her care. Imagine the faces of the students when Rhonda, the closest most had ever met to an angel on earth, said she was 17 before she finally heard somebody say, "I love you," to her. It was an aunt while Rhonda was in a psychiatric ward. Rhonda said she just always figured the previous years she just was not worthy of love. Rhonda shared with them how as a young adult she tried to heal herself with hard drugs, suicide attempts, assorted crimes, and many forms of self-abuse. Rhonda's revelation and the tears that accompanied them gave the students confidence they too could follow her lead and find happiness and healing through writing poetry. Rhonda endured such horrific physical pain to teach these classes. In 2023, chest and abdominal pain, which led to the surgery, plagued Rhonda, as did ever-worsening fatigue. 2 hours of morning teaching tired her enough. She often napped the entire afternoon and several times on into the next morning. So she slept through the night too. Last spring's surgeries left her in even worse shape for teaching. When not teaching, Rhonda was basically tethered to her home hospital bed, depending on 14-hour feeding tubes for nourishment. Balancing pain medications was extremely tricky. The tubes were never easy. And it was evident they were especially troublesome when she walked in the facility that last Friday. The wires were poking her horribly. As we drove home, Rhonda caught her breath at every bump in the road. I drove out of my way to go down smooth roads to try to help her. Yet, after every drawn breath, she would relax a little, and the corners of her mouth would raise into with the red lipstick, would raise into a slight smile. Rather than complaining, Rhonda was planning more semesters as I drove. She was also talking about more poetry. She wanted us to get cracking on a book she'd persuaded me to assist in. It was to be called "Yes, This Is Kansas, Paint Me In." It's about the we had identified 8 geographical regions. We were going to have a strong narrative text, and then poetry, and then a lot of my photography to go with it. The main thing is Rhonda wanted people to realize how healing going to the waterfalls of Kansas or the giant caves could be. And she wanted to give a copy of that book to every student that she had. So they too, as well as poetry, they could find places to go for inspiration. But the book, at least as she planned it, is not to be. One day and 1 month after that class, after that long, slow drive home, God ushered Rhonda to a new home. And in my mind, I can see 3-year-old Rhonda running through the gates of heaven and into the arms of a loving mother who'd waited 69 years to give her special child a hug. Rhonda can finally experience the kind of love she'd always given but never gotten. Enjoy it, Rhonda. Those of us left behind will try to continue your legacy of spreading love to others. Thank you.
Well, that's a hard act to follow. Curtis Becker? Thank you, Michael.
Yes, thank you, Michael. And I think that this is all one act today as we not only honor Stafford, but as we honor Rhonda. And, I think we all have those stories about how Rhonda made us feel welcome, how Rhonda made us feel like we were the most important person in her sphere at that time. And when I first met Rhonda, we bonded over the fact that we actually grew up not too far from each other. And we actually didn't take a lot of trips, but we did take a trip out to Dodge City one time. And yes, it was a lot of fun. Even though I'm younger, I kind of felt like she was the young girl just having fun. And I don't think it was Cheetos, but it was something we were eating. I don't even remember. But Rhonda reminds me of Kansas, so I decided this afternoon that Kansas was going to be my theme, and I'm going to start with Stafford's Across Kansas. My family slept those level miles, but like a bell rung deep till dawn. I drove down an aisle of sound, nothing real but in the bell, past the town where I was born. Once you cross a land like that, you own your face more. What the light struck told a self every rock denied all the rest of the world. We stopped at Sharon Springs and ate. My state still dark, my dream too long to tell. The poem of Rhonda's I chose is her poem, Hometown. I rode the winds of my hometown, heard the gossip, became the topic. I hurried the ground beneath my feet, anxious to grow, to leave. Others had, most did. When life's mirror reflected back, so many decades passed, memories swayed from a life hard lived. Those left in my hometown had not changed. My thoughts about them did. The gossip I'd heard and caused was love and concern, not ill intent. Curious minds wish to know those amongst them. How else may they best serve? The ground I'd hurried beneath my feet felt the same beneath bare toe. We breathed as one, that town and I, as I grew old. And the last thing I'm going to read is a poem that I wrote called Kansas Day. And I was thinking about the Kansas theme this last Wednesday, as it was Kansas Day, and I started talking with my students about it, and we had a very nice off-the-topic conversation about Kansas and everything that Kansas has done for all of us. Kansas Day, grass crunches underfoot, frosty Flint Hills morning, stark darkness fractured, color spills from the horizon. Kansas Day, glass plates clanking away in the kitchen of our favorite breakfast place. Coffee warms our noses. Kansas Day, you smile at me, we share unspoken words as the guy at the next table talks about how he hates it here. Kansas Day, colors revisit the sky, dusk gives way to night, the empty, windswept plains, our home. Kansas Day, glad not everyone loves this place. More Kansas for you and I. We hold hands as the wind whispers in our ear. I want to say one other thing. As the publisher of 2 of Rhonda's books, I published Winds of Time, and I also published I Love the Child. And those were both just wonderful experiences getting to work creatively with Rhonda. But I wanted everyone to know that I've had conversations with Rhonda's kids, and they are donating all of her proceeds from future sales of the book to local bookstores. And I am going to do that as well. So any time one of her books sells, all the proceeds will go to support either the local bookstore that sold it, or if it's sold in one of those A or B places, I will make sure that the money gets to one of our local bookstores. Thanks. Sorry.
Eric McHenry.
What a privilege to be here. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rhonda, for getting this going and keeping it going for so many years. And thank you, Annette and Diane and Iris, for keeping it going further. It's such a wonderful and necessary labor of love to get together annually with our Stafford people. These are my people. I'll share a poem that Rhonda would always ask me to share at this event because it was a favorite of hers. And Steve made reference to it earlier, The Farm on the Great Plains. I think this is the poem that Richard Hugo said was the poem that all of us have been waiting for, whether we know it or not. The Farm on the Great Plains. A telephone line goes cold. Birds tread it wherever it goes. A farm back of a great plain tugs an end of the line. I call that farm every year, ringing it, listening, still. No one is home at the farm. The line gives only a hum. Some year I will ring the line on a night at last the right one, and with an eye tapered for braille, from the phone on the wall I will see the tenant who waits, the last one left at the place. Through the dark my braille eye will lovingly touch his face. Hello, is mother at home? No one is home today. But father, he should be there. No one is here. But you, are you the one? Then the line will be gone because both ends will be home. No space, no birds, no farm. Myself will be the plain, wise as winter is gray, pure as cold posts go, pacing toward what I know. I was introduced to that poem by another great Kansas poet whom we lost recently, Jonathan Holden, who really guided me to seeing its greatness, both in conversation and with the help of his terrific study of William Stafford, The Mark to Turn, which I think was one of the first, maybe the first major critical study of Stafford. Steve is nodding, so I have confirmation here. So I commend The Mark to Turn to you by the great late Jonathan Holden. And thank you, Rhonda, and thank you, Jonathan, and thank you, Stafford. Thank you, Kansas poets who came before us. Speaking of which, today is the 124th birthday of Langston Hughes, who was born in Joplin, Missouri, but grew up in Lawrence and in Topeka. And when he lived in Lawrence, he lived in fear of the building that we're in right now because it was the bank building. And his grandmother, who was raising him, was in constant fear of their home being repossessed by the bank. And so I love the historical symmetry of the fact that this building is now no longer a bank, but is in fact a museum that holds a permanent Langston Hughes exhibit. So Annette has given this her blessing in honor of the first day of Black History Month and in honor of the birthday of Langston Hughes. I'm going to share a poem slightly on the long side, but I'll probably get angry and energized enough reading it that I'll get through it fairly quickly. This is a poem that its title may resemble a political slogan that we've heard too much of recently, but it is radically, radically different from that slogan. This is a poem. This is not fiction. Let America be America again. I feel that Stafford and Ronda would endorse this too. Let America be America again. Let it be the dream it used to be. Let it be the pioneer on the plain, seeking a home where he himself is free. America never was America to me. Let America be the dream the dreamers dreamed. Let it be that great strong land of love where never kings connive nor tyrants scheme, that any man be crushed by one above. It never was America to me. Oh, let my land be a land where liberty is crowned with no false patriotic wreath, but opportunity is real and life is free. Equality is in the air we breathe. There's never been equality for me, nor freedom in this homeland of the free. Say, who are you that mumbles in the dark? And who are you that draws your veil across the stars? I am the poor white, fooled and pushed apart. I am the Negro bearing slavery's scars. I am the red man driven from the land. I am the immigrant clutching the hope I seek, and finding only the same old stupid plan of dog eat dog, of mighty crush the weak. I am the young man full of strength and hope, tangled in that ancient endless chain of profit, power, gain, of grab the land, of grab the gold, of grab the ways of satisfying need, of work the men, of take the pay, of owning everything for one's own greed. I am the farmer, bondsman to the soil. I am the worker sold to the machine. I am the Negro servant to you all. I am the people, humble, hungry, mean, hungry yet today, despite the dream, beaten yet today. Oh, pioneers. I am the man who never got ahead, the poorest worker bartered through the years. Yet I'm the one who dreamt our basic dream in the old world, while still a serf of kings, who dreamt a dream so strong, so brave, so true, that even yet its mighty daring sings in every brick and stone, in every furrow turned, that's made America the land it has become. Oh, I'm the man who sailed those early seas in search of what I meant to be my home. For I'm the one who left dark Ireland's shore, and Poland's plain, and England's grassy lea, and tore from black Africa's strand I came to build a homeland of the free. The free? Who said the free? Not me. Surely not me. The millions on relief today, the millions shot down when we strike, the millions who have nothing for our pay, for all the dreams we've dreamed, and all the songs we've sung, and all the hopes we've held, and all the flags we've hung. The millions who have nothing for our pay except the dream that's almost dead today. Oh, let America be America again. The land that never has been yet, and yet must be. The land where every man is free. The land that's mine, the poor man's, Indians, Negroes, me, who made America, whose sweat and blood, whose faith and pain, whose hand at the foundry, whose plow in the rain, must bring our mighty dream again. Sure, call me any ugly name you choose. The steel of freedom does not stain. From those who live like leeches on the people's lives, we must take back our land again. America. Oh yes, I say it plain. America never was America to me, and yet I swear this oath. America will be. Out of the rack and ruin of our gangster death, the rape and rot of graft and stealth and lies, we the people must redeem the land, the mines, the plants, the rivers, the mountains, and the endless plain, all the stretch of these great green states, and make America again.
Oh, it's Iris, sorry. Iris Craven.
Okay, I don't know if I can do this after that. Whoa, okay. Hi. So I'm going to read William Stafford's poem titled These Mornings. These Mornings was written by Stafford while he was interned as a conscientious objector during World War II. In the poem, he imagines the effects of bombing by both Allied and Axis powers, such as the Nazi Blitz of London and the Allied bombing of Hamburg, known as Operation Gomorrah, during which a firestorm killed over 40,000 German civilians. The habit of feeling compassion for one's country's enemies was lifelong for Stafford. Each August 6th, on Hiroshima Day, he and his friend Hashimoto would take part in the Shadow Project in Portland, Oregon, lying down on the sidewalk at City Center to chalk their bodies' shapes in memories of Japanese citizens incinerated by the United States' first atomic bomb. And this is the poem. These mornings, watch our smoke curdle up out of the chimney into the canyon channel of air. The wind shakes it free over the trees and hurries it into nothing. Today, there's more smoke in the world than ever before. There are more cities going into the sky, helplessly, than ever before. The cities today are going away into the sky, and what is left is going into the earth. This is what happens when a city is bombed. Part of that city goes away into the sky, and part of that city goes into the earth. And that is what happens to the people when a city is bombed. Part of them goes away into the sky, and part of them goes into the earth. And what is left for us between the sky and the earth is a scar. Yeah. And this is what I wrote for Rhonda. It's called Guts. It took guts for my son to walk to the turnpike, run in front of an 18-wheel truck, ending his life, stopping his heart. It took my dear friend by surprise when it was discovered that her guts were tucked behind her heart. With her guts tucked behind her heart, she grabbed my heart, grabbed my hands, and held me while my guts wrenched with trauma and grief. She held on and then hooked up to her feeding tube for 14 hours a day. She knew a thing or two about traumatic grief. She never looked away when I told her the story of my son's life and death. Her ruby red lips never quivered or frowned when I retched with pain. She digested it all with me through her guts, tucked up behind her heart, and lay quietly on her bed, hooked to her feeding tube 14 hours a day while I sobbed on the phone. When she left to go to the Mayo Clinic, she told me if they couldn't fix her, she didn't want to go on. She was done. I always wanted her to be my son's life coach. Now, late at night, when my stomach turns over and my heart tucks up into my throat, I get some comfort in believing that Rhonda, my dear friend, is finally coaching my son. He will love her ruby red lips.
Thank you, Iris. Amy Nixon?
Like a lot of people here, I was in a writing group with Rhonda, and I'm going to read her poem, Geese. Geese circle around, fly backwards, fail to synchronize, flail and squawk. eventually fall away into space, their instincts as confused as my own. This year, an Antichrist strides, legs long enough to reach Kansas from DC, or is that New York? Native Americans fight for clean water rights the world over, stand their ground as others around me shrink and smirk, shirk family duties. How do we triage those we love? Why can't we inconvenience ourselves, downsize our homes, or simply ask that aged parent for a loan? Live together as one. I keep faith and presence with like-minded people, promise myself to continue the fight, search the sky for geese who by instinct know where they're going, take flight, and so do I. And I want to go slightly rogue, with all due respect to Stafford, and read something instead of by him, by another member of our group that we lost recently, Kat Green. We put this book together in 2018 of our collective poems. This is called How to Fly in Dreams. If you are relaxed, simply step up on the pliant air and keep climbing until you can clear the treetops and power lines. Then slowly pedal like riding a bike. Watch where you are going. Don't run into mountains or birds or angels. Alternatively, find a mob with flaming torches and pitchforks, then run. If you are lucky, you will soon be above their reach. Of course, if you don't get up some speed, they will just follow you, poking at your heels. I find I am most comfortable at lower altitudes where I can recognize landmarks. But on occasion, it is thrilling to soar straight up to the upper edge of the atmosphere. You gain perspective, but lose your place. And then this one is mine. It's called The Thing Is. The thing is that peaks are forever followed by valleys. Sometimes a buffalo wallow studded with violets, a purple shelter safe from the underbite of a spring wind. But other times a boggy depression, greedily sucking the shoes right off your feet. Either way, the climbing up and out and up can loom impossible, unreasonable, why botherable? Your bundle of mistakes weighed heavy on your shoulder. Will you remember the spot where your newly minted muscles began to clamber goat-like over the outcroppings, or the moment when the hermit of your body became a lantern shining into the wild dark? When you reach a summit, kiss the sky. Lie down and make a dirt angel, winging your arms with relief. The thing is, you will have to do it again. The ravines and pinnacles, the stumbling and celebrating. But now your heart is a map, dear one, notated and etched deep. Look closely and you'll see. X marks the miracle.
Thank you, Amy. Deborah Alphus.
I wrote a couple of little ABC poems in memory of Rhonda. And, you know, they're silly and unsophisticated, but I'd like to think that they would make Rhonda smile. Rhonda, from A to Z. A beautiful, creative dynamo energetically fostered gratitude. Her innate joy kept Laurentians marvelously nourished. Observant poetry quintessentially recounted survival, trials, understanding, vitality, wisdom, exuding youthful zeal. Yes. And then I have Rhonda's advice to us from Z to A. Zap your xenophobia. Wear violet underwear. Take spirited recumbent rides quickly past Osawatomie. Never miss lasagna. Keep joyful. Instigate happiness. Give friends eclairs. Devour chocolate baked goods always.
You gotta love poems that have chocolate. Christina Hawk. Did I say that right?
Not quite.
Okay, say it again.
How?
Houck. Christina, how,
It looks like pop, but it sounds like out. Hey, y'all.
Hi.
hey,
It's great to see everybody here. Thanks to the beautiful trio in the front, Annette, Diane, and Iris, for organizing this. I was very fortunate to meet William Stafford once at a writing conference in Washington, and he does, in fact, tell people there is no such thing as writer's block. All you have to do is lower your standards. So working that out. This is called Cutting Loose. Sometimes from sorrow, for no reason, you sing. For no reason, you accept the way of being lost, cutting loose from all else and electing a world where you go where you want to. Arbitrary, a sound comes, a reminder that a steady center is holding all else. If you listen, that sound will tell you where it is, and you can slide your way past trouble. Certain twisted monsters always bar the path, but that's when you get going best, glad to be lost, learning how real it is here on earth, again and again. So I only met Ronda one time. It was here a year ago. I feel like I really missed a boat, you know? So I don't know Ronda, but I do know Grief, and this is a poem of mine that I wrote way back in 1991, about 4 months after my mother had died. And that's an interesting point in Grief because it's let its claws relax a little bit, and you have a little bit of room to breathe from time to time. And so I think maybe some people are kind of getting to that point. Anyway, this poem's called, this poem has some archaic technology in it. So I'm sure many of you have heard of collect calls and phone booths. Okay, calling. Dear frugal mother, shabby in slippers, 10 winters warm. If you were living, I'd call every night, New York to California, collect. Worried I'd forget to repay you, you'd hesitate. But how can a woman tethered to ventilator hope to connect, except to pick up and say, yes, I accept. I'm having a wonderful time. If you could get to the phone, I'd tell you about the ice on Lake Christina melting under sunlight. Even to complain about the broken computer would soothe me, just to hear you say, oh, Christy, I'm sorry. Just to hear you ask, will it cost a lot? It's been 4 months. Some days I don't think much about what I've lost. But this morning you feel as close as the ache in my jaw. In the dream you exclaimed, I'm happy now, why can't you let go? I thought this meant your love was dead and went outside in the icy dawn, down to the lake to see the edge refrozen, reeds stiff. I know they'll thaw again, but who is left to tell me when to step out, when to wait, when to turn back? If I thought it would help, I'd fling myself in, sink into mud, eyes open, looking for you. I trudge to the payphone, call information just to say your name out loud, just to throw my voice down a long, empty line, dying to reach him. And so not only did I miss meeting Ronda, I missed meeting Ronda, and I have a lot of books by Ronda to look forward to reading. So this is the first book of hers that I've got, Water Signs, and I thought this poem was appropriate for the occasion. It's called Don't Get Attached. Don't get attached to those earthly things, these earthly things, those earthly things. Don't get attached to diamond rings, butterfly wings, kings or queens. Don't get attached to trees and leaves, bugs and wind, song and rain. Don't get attached to fire and smoke, sticks and stones, hugs and pokes. Don't get attached to laughter and jokes, sleep and dreams, cake and ice cream. Don't get attached to dance and dogs, song and romance, to cries or blues. Don't get attached to hummingbird hearts, to anything arts, songs to sing. Don't get attached to rhythm and rhyme, sunset, sunrise, to the change of time. Don't get attached to those earthly things, these earthly things, those earthly things. Don't be afraid of this dying thing, this loving thing, this living thing. Thank you.
We are now going to take a 10-minute intermission. 10. Only 10 minutes, herd of cats. Be back at 2:26. There are some stacks up here. Stacks up here. Next to the photos. Is it okay to jump on and introduce Yeah, I know, you know, you see the little chairs staying up here. Oh, yes, hi.
Good to see you, Nate.
Good to see you, man.
No, I was
Yeah, I know, you always do that. We didn't do so good until we did. And it was a flop summer.
I was in the spring.
Oh, yeah, I know. When I was speaking, You trying to get I hear you have a herd of young sons to wear. Yeah, particularly today, right? To the right of the
That's all I care. We're not waiting for me.
I did use it.
If there's any CDs left, I'll bring them Wednesday.
1 minute warning. I have no clue.
Gathering together, taking your close sitting, finding your comfy place. We're all together. Part two. This has been incredible, truly incredible. I'll give you a moment here to get your seats and get comfortable. I want to say a word about the person who has come the furthest to be here today, Artie Ware, a good friend of Rhonda's, and if we have time in our schedule, she has some words to share. The next reader, yes, from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Our next reader is Dwayne Johnson. Ready, Dwayne?
All right.
Thank you. Maybe about 10 or 12 years ago, I put out a CD of poetry with myself, Rhonda, Dan Cole, and Roy Beckmeyer. And it's this one right here, View from Smoky Hill. There are about a dozen copies on the table behind this partition. And if you want to grab one, you can. And if you want to make a donation to District 2 of Kansas Authors Club, please feel free to do that. Some of Rhonda's poems that are on this CD include Moonstain, Winter Witch, What My Mother Didn't Teach Me, I Learned from the Prairie. I know some of you are familiar with many of these. Spanish Moss, Stone-Eyed Coal Girl, Passages, and Lighthouse. And I would like to read one of those on this CD, entitled Wherever Wind by Rhonda. And she does it better if you happen to take a copy of the CD, you'll be able to hear her in her clear, quiet, understated voice through this poem. Why fear when I know which way the wind blows? Any doubt? Then I walk from this flat land to stand under the oldest cottonwood tree, high on the hill to feel spit dry upon one finger held skyward. Which direction will my ashes carry once my remains no longer matter? Will they shift and swarm as locusts weathered during the Depression? Or if the season is ripe, will they wash through dry creek beds like the floods revived during the 50s? Perhaps the ashes sift fine as silk upon prairie loess and flowering meadows, where bee and bird alike carry them in all directions. Or maybe one blustery day, the ashes mixed with flakes so large they cover black earth within seconds, layering upon frozen ground, time no longer a factor, fear no longer a presence. Wherever wind takes me, I remain in Kansas. And we seem to be giving William Stafford short thrift here, but I think Rhonda is probably a bit more important to us this year. But I'd like to do one of my favorite Stafford poems entitled Listening. My father could hear a little animal step or a moth in the darkness against the screen. And every sound called the listening out into places where the rest of us had never been. More spoke of him from the soft, wild night than came to our porch for us on the wind. We would watch him look up, and his face grow keen till the walls of the world flared, widened. My father heard so much that we shall stand, inviting the quiet by turning the face, waiting for a time when something in the night will touch us too from that other place. And then I'd like to do one of my poems. I was asked to do this last year, and I didn't remember it well enough to do so. And I was a bit embarrassed by that, so I've memorized it again, rememorized it. It's entitled The Woman Beneath the Tree. And there's two characters in the poem, you might think, the woman and the tree, but in fact, they're the same individual. She whispers tales of water signs, moon stains, and winds of time. She's never known for sure where she came from. First one family, then two more. Where she is now seems unsettled. But she knows her heart's desire. And facing evening star, she stands beneath that tree, her back to it, touching without leaning against it, considering tomorrow. The tree, a chestnut oak, firmly rooted, has traveled 80 times around its star, drawing rings around its unswerving heart that throbs to a timeless pulse, still rhythms invoking winds of time and water signs. Their growing vantage grants them a grand view of the lake, and the woman and the tree share their blooming visions with each other. Thank you. And
Next up is Beth Gully.
All right, this is harder than I thought it was going to be. So I'm going to start with Stafford, and I'm going to read a funny poem. So, and then it'll be harder. So I actually came to William Stafford because of Rhonda, because she started this event and she invited me in. Then I realized that I had found a mentor and a kindred spirit in Stafford. And so sometimes, not that long ago, someone said, "Your poems, Beth, are so, they look so simple. And then you get to the end and then you think about them for a while." And I was like, So I read this by William Stafford and I thought, oh, yes. Thinking about being called simple by a critic.
I wanted the plums, but I waited. The sun went down, the fire went out. With no lights on, I waited. From the night again, those words, how stupid I was. And I closed my eyes to listen. The words all sank down deep and rich. I felt their truth and began to live them. They were mine to enjoy. Who but a friend could give so sternly what the sky feels for everyone, but few learn to cherish? In the dark with the truth, I began the sentence of my life and found it so simple there was no way back into qualifying my thoughts with irony or anything like that. I went to the fridge and opened it. Sure enough, the light was on. I reached in and got the plums. So I met Ronda online, and then she became a huge influence in my life. And I think many of the people in this room I met mainly because I knew Ronda. So, and I'm really grateful for all of you, and I'm grateful for her that she made a big tent for everyone. We could all sit under, and I am one of the people that she brought in. So. And she was on the Writers Place board, and we were starting this thing where we were going to do a review circle where we would read each other's books and review them, and then we would try to make the circle bigger. But we just started it out to see how it would work. And the last book that I reviewed from that was Rhonda's Water Signs. And this is one of the poems that I had sticky noted to make sure I put in my review. So this is Just Dirt. I arbitrarily clean a Ziploc bag of dirt, shifted from one place to another. I think about pouring it inside a glass jar, ideally antique, from the same farm the dirt came from. I think about tossing it inside the trash bag draped over my arm. I can't bring myself to relinquish what brought me to my knees the last time I visited. The old homestead burning to the ground was more than I could bear. I claw-dried earth, filled the bag, my lungs, with what I'd come to love as a child, my first real home. It was the same dirt I craved and ate following Rocky Mountain thunderstorms that carved pathways through pasture and sky, leaving my view and breath fresh, quickened. I no longer search for happiness. I accept emotions flow like dirt through my fingers. And then I'm going to read one of my poems that's called I'm Racing the Meridazine, because one of the things that Rhonda and I both loved is the Flint Hills Trail. So I, for a very long time, lived in Paola, and I'm a trail runner, and I did a lot of my training on the Flint Hills Trail. I would start from Osawatomie and go towards Rantoul or maybe Ottawa, or start in Ottawa and go towards Rantoul. But I would spend a lot of time on that. And then Rhonda started riding her bike, and she would be taking pictures, and I'd go, oh, there's my bridge. I know that. And just, I know she loved that trail so much. So the Meridazine runs parallel in parts between Osawatomie and Rantoul. So I'm racing the Meridazine as it ambles towards flood stage. I should know better, trust the weather experts, but my own best judgment tells me the trail I'm on was built for the railroad, so chances are good the water won't reach this high. Regardless, I run a little faster as the water slowly rises below me. Meanwhile, Nana's in the hospital for the third time in so many weeks. She's racing the infection that wanders from the kidneys to the stomach to the lungs. She is there to listen to the medical experts. Her own best judgment tells her this fight is one all of us eventually lose. Regardless, she fights a little harder, hangs on a little while more.
Thank you so much. Deborah Ursig? Am I saying that right?
Hello, thank you for hosting this event. Again, I was introduced to William Stafford because of this event and because Rhonda invited me. So I am going to first read this Stafford poem, and it is called Allegiances. It is time for all the heroes to go home, if they have any. Time for all of us common ones to locate ourselves by the real things we live by. Far to the north, or indeed in any direction, strange mountains and creatures have always lurked. Elves, goblins, trolls, and spiders. We encounter them in dread and wonder. But once we have tasted far streams, touched the gold, found some limit beyond the waterfall, a season changes and we come back changed, but safe, quiet, grateful. Suppose an insane wind holds all the hills while strange beliefs whine at the traveler's ears. We ordinary beings can cling to the earth and love where we are, sturdy for common things. And then I have, I thought, oh, I had that marked with that page. I pulled it out. But I'm just going to do one page. This, I don't know how many of you have this. I love the child book, but it's, the entire book is the poem. But I'm only going to read one page because I know there's probably other people that are going to read from it. I didn't want to read the entire poem. So this wasn't the one I was going to read, but it'll work. I'm not sure where. Oh, here it is. Here it is. I love the child who sits on my lap, takes long naps, goes to bed early, is filled with surprises, holds sunshine in her eyes, and kittens on her lap once she arises. And she has there's a picture of Apollonia, and that poem would also fit my daughter very well. I'm going to read one more of those. I love the child, bold and sassy, the daredevil, climbing and jumping, standing close to the edge, breaks a bone without a moan, then does it again. And we all know children like that.
Yes.
And then I had written a poem for Rhonda, but I'm not reading it today. I probably wouldn't be able to read it. So this one makes me think of her. Wish I was fishing. Sitting on the dock on a hot July day. Wish I had a pole. Listening to the old cottonwood laughing at me. Wind pushing the little ripples under my feet. Fish merrily flipping by. Not even a hook on a stick to tease them with. No minnow or night crawler to tantalize. Just Kansas wind, an old farm girl, and memories sweeping by. Gnarly roots seek the cool water. The tree leans precariously over the shimmering green pool. Moss clinging to the edges. Little tadpoles dart in and out like children playing tag at recess. A chain clanks on an old shed, adding to the song of the meadowlark and dove. As shadows fall, frogs and toads lend their baritone and bass, a symphony heard only when quietly we take a breath. Listen. And I just want to say one more thing. Rhonda edited my book. And that was one of them. She said, stop capitalizing the beginning of every sentence. So she taught me a lot.
Thank you so much. Carrie Moyer.
Hi.
Hi.
So, I'm gonna raise this a bit. There we go. So Rhonda was a force of nature. I was talking to Lindsay about how I don't know that I've ever known anybody where their spirit's age was in such contrast with the body that fought them. The first time I came to this event was a number of years ago. And, I don't know, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was when I had just done this book right here. And I came in early because I didn't know how to do any of this yet. So I showed up too early, and Rhonda put me to work setting up chairs, which was fine. Because who could say no to her? Because she did so much for so many. And I remember her saying to me, "Your poetry is Staffordy." And as a former student of Stephen Hind and having come out of Hutch, JUCO, and a creative writing class, I was like, I can handle that. But she did a lot for me and for so many. And I cried more than once, including earlier talking to Lindsay. And it actually shocked me, the loss, how much it hit me. But I'm going to read a little bit. I've got 3.5 minutes left, make it less than that now. I'm going to start with a Stafford poem, Ask Me. Sometime when the river's eyes ask me mistakes I have made. Ask me whether what I've done is my life. Others have come in their slow way into my thoughts, and some have tried to help or to hurt. Ask me what difference their strongest love or hate has made. I will listen to what you say. You and I can turn and look at the silent river and wait. We know the current is there, hidden, and there are comings and goings from miles away to hold the stillness exactly before us. What the river says, that is what I say. I have the very first poem that Ronda and I talked about that I had written was called Weeds. And it's about weeds, how hardy and strong they are. And of course, there's a metaphor we all draw about people, and people can be weeds. To be clear, when I wrote it, I was really talking about weeds. But I got the metaphor. And of course, a poem is whatever the reader decides it is for them. But I'm going to read the poem out of the first book, a book that she helped me promote by actually having me do a reading with her at the Raven when she did a book launch. And she helped me promote this. I can't say young author, I was older, but my first book, Kellogg Press, Curtis Becker, thank you. He got me started. But this poem is called Weeds. Free are weeds that grow among the grasses, hardy notched roots holding deep and fertile ground, or found splitting stone in rock-choked soil, stubborn foliage found thriving where native flora dies, standing bold, defiant, cursed leaves and vines, coming up between concrete cracks, discarded topsoil bags. Wild things making home wherever rebel seeds fall, and water sent from bursting clouds will help them grow, while God smiles down upon his scorned creations. And I think I have time to do it.
Go ahead.
I was going to read a section, but I think I can read the whole thing. This is called A Perfect Lonely Heaven by Rhonda. Fish fly against the backdrop of a perfect lonely heaven. I turn my back on the chives. I don't feel their love return. Perhaps they felt neglected when I didn't visit them through the summer, their roots having grown through the container I'd left them in, nylon and hairy. I don't bother with scissors. I have them with a quick twist of my wrist. The sunflowers I planted leave come fall. Up after their faces revolve the movement of the sun. It gets awfully chilly in the garden when the lavender and sage mask their beauty in seed-filled pods. Hibiscus delay leaves that began hopeful to poke through the debris, left in loving protection no longer green. Fall winds touch me from all directions. Ducks dart deep against the rocky, mossy shore, the center of the four corners, called to order by black-capped chickadees, holds promise of immature bald eagles playing against the horizon. The south wind soothed, glided over treetops, held promises of survival. Their sleepy lullaby lands in endless time. Summer releases into fall. The north wind blows the haggard, ragged breath of the dying. Lips purse, moaning, stopping, starting, still. Fish fly overhead against the backdrop of a perfect, lonely heaven. Thank you. We love you, Ronda.
I got it. Thank you, Carrie. Olive Sullivan.
Now it's gonna attack me. Here, let me be your assistant. Thank you. I just like to create a little havoc wherever I go. I don't remember exactly where I met Rhonda for the first time, but the first thing that we did that stands out in my mind is we were at an event created by Z Hall, and Annette and Rhonda and I read together. We read it, we sort of created a piece and we read it together. And from then on, she was just, I always felt like she was somebody that was in my corner, even though I lived in Pittsburgh, Kansas, and we never saw each other. I mean, we rarely saw each other, except at things like this. And she helped me, she was instrumental in helping me publish my first book of poetry with Meadowlark Press, because she introduced me to Tracy and sort of like said to Tracy, well, you need to pay attention. And Tracy said, okay, and then did. And now I have two books with Tracy. But Rhonda is also the person who introduced me to William Stafford. And I was a literature major. You would have thought I would have heard of him, but I probably did, because the name was familiar, but I really didn't know anything about him. And so when Diane said, well, you have to choose a William Stafford poem, I was like, what did William Stafford write? But I found on Penitencia Creek, and because I'm a creek and river person, and so was Rhonda, I thought, well, this would be a good choice. Minnows nibble at my white feet, numbering the sand in Penitencia Creek. Water that tastes of the tops of hills that curve and rove. Minnows that remember the earth on its way from hills. Generations ministering to all that moves. Cutthroat fingerlings wearing their shadows up the reticent side of the creek. This is terrible. Guess what? That's all you're going to get to hear. Nobody.
That's good. That's good.
Oh, here's the rest. Sorry. The last 10 years of our world's need, we have been friends of solitude while reaching around the ocean's tide. Death angels frighten the Geiger counter. Friends of 10 years, the years of need when our world waded deeper and felt nibbling minnows. And where were we? Climbing along Penitencia Creek. Registering fins all afternoon, meeting appointments with the sun. I say back to touches on the feet. Beside me, there's no one along this creek who keeps an appointment. Go touch her feet. For all in this valley are my kin, and exalted walkers are reminded of vows, shallow or deep, kin from the deep. Tonight, returning from this day of waiting, we will be caves alive with shadows, lulled from wilder parts of earth. Live oaks will wear missions in the limbs, walls that extenuate, silhouettes implying all that is left of faith. The San Andreas fault will tick in the earth while in unquiet an old bell sounds. We will be quiet as roots of willow, secret by shadow, promised by stillness of current and sand, descending by awareness and crawling by rocks like vertical horizons, Years have dragged across our land. On the big horizon lurk missions of flame. Shadows wear devotion gracefully. Back there in the dark lie sequoia seeds. Yeah. So I'm gonna have to pay attention to William Stafford now. I'm going to read you a couple of poems of mine. This is my second book from Meadowlark, and I like to say the first one is about falling in love and this one's about falling apart. So, the first poem I'm going to read is Meridicine. We just heard about the Meridicine. That night we drove back from the doctors in Kansas City. I wrote a poem. As we crossed the Meridicine River, my words spilled out, celebrating the darkness, the call of spring peepers, the night heron, the splash of a beaver, the muttering ducks settling in for the night, and the call of a late flock of geese coming into the marsh. You ask how I could hear all that over the sound of the road and the radio, and I said I just knew it was there, the way I can feel the Rockies pulling me westward, orienting me to my place on earth. I wrote on a scrap of paper, or maybe in my blue notebook. I don't know. That poem is lost. I searched all my journals, scraps of paper spilling over the kitchen table, waiting for me to do my taxes, backs of envelopes, the recesses of my cluttered mind. I believe that poem was magic good, but it is lost, as are you, my love, and the magic. And then this last poem, I wrote about myself because I thought I was dying, and so did many other people. But then I didn't, so it's a happy ending. And as soon as I heard that we were going to be doing a memorial reading for Ronda, I thought of this. And then our friend Kat Green died, and I thought also her. And then the last month, 4 people that I know have died.
Wow.
Yes.
And if you go back like another 2 months, there's even more. So it's just like, this has been a hard year. So I'm sort of dedicating this to Ronda and to Kat and to all the beloved dead and to all of us, because, you know, we all end up there sometime. Luminous. The rough patina of my skin dissolves into the sky like a river of tiny blue butterflies, like flakes of ash, like embers. As I hold up my arms, I see my own bones, translucent, glowing with a silvery light, reaching towards the sun. I step through the lion's gateway, am transformed to light, back to the essence of stardust from which we are made. Don't cry for me. Don't cry for me. I am luminous. Oh, luminous.
Thank you. Harry Shepard.
Well, I wasn't expecting to be on the list today to read, but I did bring a couple of poems. But back in my early years in college, William Stafford came to our writing class and did a seminar for a period of time. And I've been pretty much influenced by him ever since. When Ronda started this event celebrating his life, me and her sat for hours talking about it, William Stafford and his stuff. And Ronda and I spent many, many days through the years having lunches together and stuff like that. So I really miss that woman. She was a good friend of mine. I'd like to read one of Ronda's poems called This Life, This Dance. Love my politics. I give, I have. I rarely rave about the world at large. I live within, my skin is thin. I try not to make things hard. I do not judge, least to be judged. I have sinned, I have wronged, but I continue to sing my songs. And on my deathbed, please kiss my head. No, the fighting, the wrongs were righted. The trees, the birds, the bees, the air clean, trickling brooks. I'm almost done it all. What I haven't seen, this place, the dream, the rest upon reawakening. And so I dedicate these poems that I'm reading today to Ronda and to William. Feeling large. There are times after a day of life, I stand out in the yard, letting the wind take me away, standing still. I see the trees bending excitedly while the wind sweeps into my soul. I stand realizing, becoming the earth, the wind, and the sky. As clouds hide the moon from vision, I stand with the sky. I stand with the moon. I breathe in the universe, standing so large, so connected. And I'd like to read a second one called Where the Wind Stands Still. There comes a time where the wind stands still. It is at this point that I lose my balance. The snow cushions my fall, and I lie silently, frozen in the place of my making. Strange, summer was just here, and now I'm stranded in this desolate landscape that looks so clean and sterile. Oh yes, I own all I see. I live all I feel. How did my decisions bring me to this place? I traveled through fear. I labored and labored. I nurtured the quest. Yet I am at a place where the wind stands still. Even though I liked to jump off cliffs in the early days, it was easy. Now I ask myself, rather remind myself, there was a purpose to what came, and there is a purpose to all that is to come. Yet I question all futures, for I have seen them come and I've seen them go. Complicated and expansive, they seem ephemeral now, and I remain frozen in this place. Even as I breach time and space, I let the vapor slip through my mindfulness. I lost membership of my experiences, and the memories became semi-opaque. Enough color remains in a thought that I can see the events that shaped this being's core and was guided to this desolate place. I question this place and stand and state of being. It may simply be an illusion, as I have become so good at soothing responsibilities. And then I'd like to read a couple of more recent poems. This is called,
No. Hey, Perry.
5 minutes are up?
Yep.
Yeah.
Then I'm good.
Thank you, Perry.
All right.
We had so many people today. Thank you, everyone. Maureen Carroll. Can you hear Mickey?
Shorty here. Before I knew Rhonda as a poet, I knew her as a dancer. We used to run into each other all the time at Crumpleton's. She loved to dance. She was an amazing dancer. Poetry is much like dancing. The first I'd like to read is The Bravery of Love by William Stafford. If I should have that bravery of gaining love, I would hold this hand out, level, warm, for the buffeted, snowbound little birds to come, to feed for all the years unharmed. If I should have that bravery of love. There are many fields where few birds come, through solitary storm, on level land, without a creature save the hawks that rend, where scarecrows wait, holding an equal hand, out for the little birds to come. But through a night so parallel with snow, I hold my hand out, steady, so. This is mine. I wrote this at the Second Sunday Goes Forth writing group with Rhonda. And it's wonderful to see so many of our writing group members here today, and love you all. And thanks so much to Annette and to Diane and to Iris for carrying on Rhonda's tradition. This is called When I Was Really Bold. When I was really bold, I understood that time was precious, fleeting, magical, impossible to hold, unequivocal. When I was really bold, I carved my memories like paper cutouts and lined them on the bureau to explore more later in quiet times. When I was really bold, I acted from my righteous belly, called out cheaters and bullies, and sent them flying like popcorn from the bowl with my words. When I was really bold, fear stood behind me and pushed a little on my shoulder blades, encouraging me forward. I laughed and never turned. When I was really bold, I stepped into love, longing for the experience of letting go, gifted in my capacity for learning life's lessons through tears and joys. When I was really bold. Sorry, this one's Rhonda's. Rhonda was the poetry editor, in addition to doing editing for so many, she was also the poetry editor for the Wright Bridge Journal. She did a short story, which I absolutely love, called Please Don't Kill Me, which is in the spring 22 edition. I recommend it for you. And this was written for her, written by Rhonda for the Summer Journal 2023. It's called Me, Hoseless. Him, Camouflaged. We stand, cliff's edge, end of our world, boxed in, shoulder to shoulder, head to head, toe to toe, never seen eye to eye, eating our half a moon pie, hard to swallow, chocolate, decadent, take the dive, a jagged fall, freedom, blink of an eye, hand in hand, land, each other's space, passion ignites, sharing, lovers embrace, tensions gone, grievances forgotten, individual egos forsaken, delight in the us. Rhonda was brave, Rhonda was bold. Carry on her tradition.
Here, here. Thank you, Nikki. Dwayne Herman.
I didn't know Rhonda, but I did know Bill. And so I want to share two short stories about him to help you get to know him a little bit better. I first met him through the pages of World Order magazine, which I subscribed to, and he was the poetry editor of. And the poem I like best of his in there was called The Little Things That Encourage Good Fortune. And I think it's in one of his books, but I was delighted to see it. And I didn't think about bringing it because I'm not good with instructions. But I got to know him somehow through that, and then his trips here, and they weren't very often, but at sometime like 1989 or maybe right after that, I got up all the courage that I could to send him my chapbook, my first chapbook, just to see if he'd say something nice. And what he said is, I prized your book. It reaches out for the elements of our lives and does so in a context I know and cherish myself. And I still quote him. This is a book of short stories, but I still quote him because that meant a lot to me because I was very stomped on as a child and put down and humiliated. And so somebody to say something nice meant the world to me, and he was a real person, not like me. The other story is I don't know, but after this, probably, and this was after J.C. Penney moved out of White Lakes. The department store area was empty, and once in a while, a company would sell remainders of books from publishers. They buy them and sell them really, really cheap. And one of his newer books was in there, in this remainder thing. And I wrote him, I said, these are here, this is the price, would you like some? And he mailed me back some money. And he said, yes, buy as many as you can. And so I bought as much as that money was, and it was almost all of them, and sent them to him. And so I was very pleased to be able to help him. And what amazed me, and he said in his letter, was the price of those books being remaindered was cheaper than the publisher would sell them to him as the author.
Wow.
And I thought, that really sucks. That really, really sucks. Anyway, so those are my Stafford stories. But then a poem of mine, which would be dedicated to both Rhonda and Do. This morning's weather reminded me of another morning when I was 16 or younger. And a line came into my head as I was leaving the truck to get here. And so I couldn't do anything with it till I got here. So I wrote this here today. So this is the rough draft, but I want to share it to you because I think it fits in everything. The taste of summer. That's the line that came to my head. It was winter, or close enough. Wind, freezing, sleet. Winter enough. Cattle needed food. I was chosen. Dad was sick. I wanted to read, but I went. Loaded hay wagon and drove out. Cattle raced to greet. Breaking bales, scattering sections around the wagon. Cattle appreciated fresh, clean hay with the taste of summer. It was like this morning was sleet.
A story that comes to mind. Rhonda was part of a group of friends who we kept in touch a lot via Facebook. C. Luth, Marcia Epstein, Andy Johnson, who would be here except his mother died this past week. Our last message from Rhonda was in regard to one of Andy's son was going to have his 16th birthday. And Rhonda texted, Facebook messaged actually, that she would not be able to attend the party because she was in the intensive care unit at Mayo. So I responded back to her that she officially won the Intensive Care Patient Badass Award. Our next experience has to do with art, and Rhonda loved and appreciated all art and all artists. And I was excited to hear, Maureen, that you met Rhonda as a dancer because our next experience will be dance. Miss Angel Edinburgh.
I apologize. I won't be able to read today because my voice would just break.
I hear Ronda applauding.
Yes.
Heartily, thank you so very much. That's wonderful. Lorna Larson.
Thank you, everyone, for staying. Still, you know, I mean, it's a long one. I appreciate it. Okay, Annette's looking at me. Okay, I'll stop that. Okay. I think I may be the only one here who knew Rhonda and in her profession as a child care provider. Anybody else have their kids?
I don't have kids. I've known her since 74.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, I didn't know her that long because actually I had a kid with her in the late 90s. But she took care of my son, and she had more confidence as a daycare provider than I do as a parent, and that was always appreciated. And I lost track, and in 2017, my friend Annette Billings said, enter this thing called Listen to Your Mother, and there was Rhonda again talking about poop. Because yes, because we love Rhonda. So a lovely essay. And then I started lurking around Rhonda via Facebook and started lurking around y'all and came here a year ago. And I was cleaning up. I brought treats because she said bring treats. I brought treats and we were cleaning up together at the end. And she said, well, you write, right? She said, poetry? I said, well, Rhonda, sometimes they kind of leak out, but I don't know. I'm trying to write essays. And she said, well, send me some. So I did, and she looked at them, and she asked if she could use one of them in her Department of Corrections work, and I was honored to have her do that. I don't know. And then she told me to read in April, and I said, okay. And then I got myself sick enough and told Annette, no, I can't read. And so today my theme is yes. I'm showing up. I'll read two poems of mine and then William Stafford. The first poem is from a writing prompt in a book called The Fearless Way of the Writer.
and by Beth Kempton. She says, write your origin story, start with I come from. And the name of my poem is Work Shirts and Aprons. I come from people who persist, who rise before the sun and tuck their sorrows, secrets, despair, even their joys, in with their chambray work shirts and homemade aprons. They show up for the tasks of raising crops and animals, working hard, diligently. They worship faithfully. They are servants of the Lord, the Lutheran Lord. There is rest after the evening milking, a bit on Sundays. There is laughter here and there. There is fun on special occasions, a few times a year. After those special times, the next day, in the early morning, the cows need to be milked, the children and chickens fed, crops tended, aprons are donned, shirts are tucked in, feelings along with them. So I had attended Brave Voice, Karen Marion Goldberg's and Kelly Hunt's kind of amazing retreat in 2023, and I didn't think I could go in 2024. And about a week before, Karen said, well, do you want to come? And helped pave the way for that to happen. So I wrote this poem Sunday night at Brave Voice, and the poem is called Saying Yes. When I say yes to a delight that presents itself, my jaw unclenches, my shoulders feel the ease, my eyes brighten with excitement. When I say yes to one delight, the domino effect of one yes cascades to other yeses. When I say yes, the no's diminish, their wavelengths shorten, and they gracefully bow out. I have William Stafford. I'm saying under 5 minutes. I time myself. 3 minutes, 43 seconds. So, unbeknownst to me, William Stafford beat me to the yes. And this is William Stafford's yes from our prophetic poet. It could happen anytime. Tornado, earthquake, Armageddon. It could happen. Or sunshine, love, salvation. It could, That's why we wake and look out. No guarantees in this life, but some bonuses, like morning, like right now, like noon, like evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ian Cook.
Hello, everyone. My first kind of getting out of isolation a couple years ago was this reading, the Stafford reading. And when I reached out to Rhonda, she was so encouraging. And so she was really my portal back into this world of writers and community. So I'm eternally grateful for her. Otherwise, she was instrumental in helping me publish my first book of poetry last year as well. So so grateful to her. I'll read a Stafford reading poem, and then one I wrote for Rhonda after I heard she'd passed. First one, a ritual to read to each other. If you don't know the kind of person I am, and I don't know the kind of person you are, a pattern that others made may prevail in the world, and following the wrong God home, we may miss our star. For there is many a small betrayal in the mind, a shrug that lets the fragile sequence break. sending with shouts the horrible errors of childhood, storming out to play through the broken dike. And as elephants parade, holding each elephant's tail, but if one wanders, the circus won't find the park. I call it cruel, and maybe the root of all cruelty to know what occurs but not recognize the fact. And so I appeal to a voice, to something shadowy, a remote, important region in all who talk. Though we could fool each other, we should consider, lest the parade of our mutual life get lost in the dark. For it is important that awake people be awake, or a breaking line may discourage them back to sleep. The signals we give, yes or no, or maybe, should be clear. The darkness around us is deep. I think I still have some time. I'm going to read another shorter one as well. So Rhonda and I connected on water. Water's a very important symbol and carries a lot of meaning and healing for me. So the two poems I wrote one shortly after I had heard, and then I wrote one later when I encountered something that kind of took me right back to that as well. So the short one first. The keys to the sea. The entirety of time and space. A corpse lay in thicket. Serpent forms a circle, taking tail and mouth and laying peacefully down, round and round, each year shedding old skin, and in swallowing itself shows that all things in the world which are produced by divine providence also decay in the inevitable end. Before I read this last one, just reflecting again on Rhonda and her kindness and her love. I only knew her a short couple of years, but she had such an impact on me. And every time we parted ways, she told me she loved me. So this last one is called Waves, No Shores. After verse 29 of the Tao Te Ching, Practicing Powerlessness. We rise with the crest and see the whole ocean stretch before us, the beach behind, sink low with its receding into a valley of water and stillness. In flow, let the motion move the vessel, a natural rising and falling, slow frequency of water as it seeks a shore. When we move with the flow of a river, we are empowered by its wholeness as it goes on. When we fight the flow, we fight against its entirety and move nowhere. How can we struggle against the whole of creation? This grand mutual arising, the system, perfect as it always has been. There is nothing we can do to change it, whether we are in it or outside of it. With or without us, it carries on the way things are, absolute and complete. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Sandy Hazlitt. Sandy.
Pick a place and be what that place requires. I think that's what Rhonda did beautifully. But that phrase has stuck with me for a long time, especially when I was moving to Kansas. And this week when I was reading through William Stafford's poems, I found it. It's William Stafford. So I'd like to read to you his poem in response to a question. What does the earth say? The earth says, have a place, be what that place requires.
hear the sound the birds imply, and see as deep as ridges go behind each other. Some people call their scenery flat. They're only pictures framed by what they know. I think around them rises riches and a loss too equal for their chart, but absolutely tall. The earth says every summer, have a ranch. That's minimum. One tree, one well, a landscape that proclaims a universe. Sermon of the hills, Hallelujah Mountain, highway guided by the way the world is tilted, reduplication of mirage, flat evening, a kind of ritual for the wavering. The earth says where you live, wear the kind of color that your life is. Gray shirt for me. And by listening with the same bowed head that sings, draw off all things into one song. Join the sparrow on the lawn and row that easy way. The rage without met, but the rage without met by the wings within that guide you anywhere the wind blows. Listening, I think that's what the earth says. Okay. And one of Rhonda's I'd like to read, Apollonia, her daughter, put it on Facebook. And it's a very old poem, June 2010. So I'd never read it, and I don't know if it's been published, but I thought it was fascinating how it foreshadowed the later poems that we all know. And it's called If Not for the Tears. If not for the tears, my eyes would have been skyward instead of downcast. Dark stains from the mulberry tree would have gone unnoticed, as would the stains that then touched from my fingers to my lips. The taste of my childhood and that of my children's brought back more than memories. It made me remember that tears serve their purpose. They make us look places we'd never look otherwise. They clear our vision and wash the dirt of life from our souls. They remind us how good crying feels, that release we feel when tension leaves its trail down our cheeks and mingles, turning blue as ink among the mulberry juice as it splashes and spills life all over us. I have to tell you, Deb, that every line begins with a capital letter. She had to grow into that one. Yeah. Okay. Rhonda and I used to kid each other about poets' egos. And so we would sort of have this little duel about, oh, it's all about me. No, it's all about me. So this story I wrote for Rhonda is all about me until it isn't. My Rhonda story in memory of Ronda Miller. I was once Rhonda's neighbor. I lived up on the Tomahawk Hill, and Ronda lived down the other side, east to Lawrence Avenue. At this time, I had been given a medication that went terribly wrong and pushed me into a manic episode. I was looking for adventure. I snuck out of my house in bare feet and a long cotton dress. It was a wet, misty evening with a full moon. I slunk around the rock borders over to my closest neighbor's house when I saw headlights coming up the street. I ducked onto their porch and hid behind brick pillars. It was a police car. I knew they were looking for me because I was important with much to do to save the world. After they left, I decided to go down the hill to Rhonda's house. I was a bit disoriented, so I crossed over a deck ramp and knocked on a back door. An elderly couple came to the door. I apologized and told them I was looking for Ronda Miller's house. Oh, her house is next door, they said, and they led me through their house to their front door and pointed to Rhonda's house. I thanked them and walked over to Rhonda's. I knocked. Rhonda came to the door, a bit surprised, wondering, but delighted. I told her I was on an adventure. She reached out her hand and took me in. And then she looked me over. I know, she said, we need a makeover. So Rhonda gathered her beauty supplies and told me to lie down on the living room floor. She proceeded to give me a mani-pedi, rubbed me with lotion, gave me a facial, and combed my hair. And then she made up my face right down to the iconic bright red lipstick. Of course, all the while, I was certain that I was Dorothy in the Emerald City being groomed to see the wizard. Rhonda never once asked me any questions. With her wide experience, she must have known what was going on. She just took care of me. This is Rhonda. She opens her door, takes your hand, and brings you in, no matter how different you are. And then she takes care of you. I can still see her that night in the misty moonlight, smiling compassionately with those full, bright lips. She had grown up to her own moon stain. Thank you, Rhonda. Farewell, my friend.
Wow, thank you. Kevin Ravis.
So nothing tastes as good as it smells except bacon. And Walt Whitman was a fabulous poet, but only a pretty good person. But Rhonda was a wonderful poet and a wonderful person. That was what I worked out. When Rhonda was struggling, we wrote poems to her, and this is one I wrote for Rhonda. Not everyone has the voice like wind that moves every strand of hair in the room, like the breath of God over grass blades, gentle but there, like a promise, like a heartbeat, like blood moving slowly, surely through the vessels, a prayer, light of the sun, glow of the moon. Few do, you do, get well soon. So when it comes to the Stafford poems, I read this one every year, and I'm going to keep reading it until I don't need to read it anymore. This one is called Learning by William Stafford. A piccolo played, then a drum. Feet began to come, a part of the music. Here came a horse, clippity-clop away. My mother said, "Don't run. The army is after someone other than us. If you stay, you'll learn our enemy." Then he came, the speaker. He stood in the square. He told us who to hate. I watched my mother's face. It's quiet. That's him, she said. My mother is not especially well, and I wrote this the other day. It's called Fingertip. The nurse says, "Touch your finger to my finger. Now touch your own nose. Do you notice any shakiness in your hands? No? Okay, that's good. Let's try something more." So I think that's where I'm going to stop with the poems. Lawrence has some good music stores. And the other day, I was playing cowbell, a little more cowbell, and somebody lent me some sticks like this, and I was like, I bet they have some in Lawrence like that. And so I haven't even test drove these a second. So who knows what'll happen, but I'm going to play them here a little bit for you.
Yes.
So here we go. you go. Thanks, Super Super.
Artie Ware is going to share something with us. Okay, Artie.
I met Rhonda in 1974 at a job, and I grew up here in Kansas. I grew up on a farm south of Eudora. I graduated from KU after having 3 horrible semesters at K-State. So I met Rhonda after my college career, and before she went through so many things. I think I met her shortly after she moved to Lawrence with her brother. And she is probably the person that I knew who reinvented herself the most times. She worked at this job in a warehouse like I did. And then she moved on to a first marriage, and her husband encouraged her to become a model. And as you all know, she is beautiful, very beautiful. And so she modeled for a few years before she went to college and got her degree in child development and opened her daycare for many, many years. And she did also a couple of degrees in creative writing, I believe. I kind of lost track because I moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico in 1980, and I didn't keep as much track of her as I wish I had. I now regret the time that we didn't spend together. But I always looked her up when I came back to see my father, and then he passed away in 2007, so I came back less often because I had this is by the way, I had a contentious relationship with my dear brother. So anyway, I didn't come back as often as I had before. And then she went on, she went through so many things, as you all know, with her family and so on. And she told me that her father was murdered in Albuquerque when I was living there. And I guess her father's murder was never solved. And then one of her relatives, I can't remember, she said it was a stepsister or a half-sister, told her during the pandemic that her mother had actually been murdered. And she thought all that time that her mother had committed suicide. So I was like, wow, this is going to be a huge shift, because she did all this poetry about suicide, plus counseling other people who had family members murdered or had committed suicide. A very compassionate person in everything that she did. And she had told me also that after her father was murdered, I didn't even know this, that her brother and sister and herself all went into law enforcement because of that, because they were trying to solve her father's murder. And so, that was I don't exactly have all the chronology of all the many things that she did in her life. I think I got some of them mixed up. But anyway, then she became a poet, and I was just so inspired by all the things that she did with her life in spite of all the things that happened to her. Because, well, we all have stuff, but I think she's had more stuff than most people. And yet she was always sharing and cheerful and loving and giving to everyone, in spite of all the problems that she encountered in her lifetime. So anyway, I miss her so much. I wish that I had spent more time with her. I realize that I've missed out on a lot by not coming back here to Lawrence more often. And I think it's wonderful that you have this group, and I think I'll come back next year if I can, if the weather holds. You guys had that horrible snowstorm in the early part of January, and I kept looking at the weather to make sure that I could come and not get caught in a snowstorm in western Kansas. because I drove. I didn't want to take a plane. I was like, what's the point in taking a plane and then having to rent a car in Kansas City and have to deal with all that? So I just drove. But I don't know if I should read a poem or not. Is that okay?
We have for a quick poem.
Okay, well, Rhonda wrote a poem. Wasn't exactly prepared for this. I don't know where I put it. Anyway, I wrote a poem in response to a poem that she wrote. Let me see here. No, I guess it's not here. Anyway, let's see here. I titled it "To the Stars Through Difficulty," which I'm sure you all know is a Kansas State slogan. And this was in response to a poem that she wrote about her time in Denver when she was little, before I guess her father kidnapped them and took them to Denver, and then her grandparents eventually got them back and moved them back to St. Francis. So this lady that kind of looked out for her name was Myra, and this is the poem. Myra must have known I was a motherless child. She nurtured me with fresh baked bread when I believed my mother had left us by death at her own hand. So ironic. Daddy said that night, "Look up into the sky, you'll see your mommy's face in the stars." Mommy is still sparkling in the Milky Way, and after all these years, I've learned from my stepsister that my father killed my mother. Now my sister, brother, and I must process this news, relief and horror. And I wrote at the bottom, "Apologies to Rhonda, I borrowed your voice." I tried to write this in third person, and it was just so confusing. It was like, she who? Because I would be referring to Rhonda and I'd be referring to Myra, and so I just wrote it in her voice because it made it easier to understand.
Thank you. Thank you, Artie. Thank you, Artie. Thank you, everyone. Wow, what an event. And there are a few people who've had to leave, but you're all pretty much still here, and it's been a long afternoon. Wow. We have one more poem to go. That's it. And I gave myself, because I made up the list of readers, and I gave myself the impossible task of trying to pull it all together. That was a little insane. So I wrote a poem for this occasion, which is not something I usually do. So we'll see if this makes sense. This is a poem about William Stafford. It's a poem about Ronda Miller. It's a poem about us. See if this works. It's called Acorns. We the oaks who shelter the birds, who feed the badgers, boar, and deer, whose trunks can become beams to brace cathedrals and great halls. We who can live 1,000 years grew from acorns that fell from poets who came before us, from the Walts, the Emilys, the Audras, the 100 or so named John, and from William, Kansas, born and bred, from Rhonda, beloved, who handed out poems and smiles and built us stages to stand on. One day, if we're lucky, and water our words with kindness, we too will have the strength to grow 8 stories tall, to birth our own acorns, and like William and Rhonda, let them fall. Thank you, William Stafford. Thank you, Ronda Miller. Thank you, all of you in here, all of you who have ever put pen to paper, all of you who listen. What we have done today matters, and what we will do tomorrow matters. It matters for us, it matters for Rhonda, it matters for William, it matters for this whole stupid country. Thank you.
Thanks so much, man. I forgot to say thank you to the people. I'm singing now. That was a great poem, too.
Oh, okay, because I get my months.
It was wonderful. I love the oath metaphor. That was great. I didn't mean to say anything bad about Walt Whitman. I was just saying we all have our faults. Yeah. Yeah, I had a friend from Germany, like an Aisha, that was great. That was